Picture this: China, early 20th century, a nation in flux. The mighty Qing dynasty, which had reigned for over 260 years, fell in 1912. This epical event left a power vacuum in its wake, and the nation found itself on the cusp of dramatic change. Out of this chaos emerged two significant players, each with their own vision for China's future. On one side was the nationalist Kuomintang, or the KMT, led by the charismatic Sun Yat-sen, and later, Chiang Kai-shek. On the other, the fledgling Communist Party of China, the CPC, fueled by the revolutionary ideologies of Marx and Lenin. These two parties initially worked together to end the rule of warlords and unite the country. However, their ideological differences were too vast, and their temporary alliance crumbled, and thus, the stage was set for a conflict that would redefine China's future. The year is 1927, and the uneasy alliance between the Nationalist Party, or Kuomintang, KMT, and the Chinese Communist Party, CPC, is about to crumble. In the bustling city of Shanghai, tensions were reaching a boiling point. The KMT, led by Chiang Kai-shek, and the CPC had been working in an uncomfortable alliance to unify China. But ideological differences were becoming impossible to reconcile. The KMT, with its belief in a centralized government, was increasingly at odds with the CPC's vision of a proletarian revolution. In April, these ideological clashes would culminate in a brutal event known as the Shanghai Massacre. Chiang Kai-shek, viewing the communists as a threat to his rule, ordered a purge. Thousands of communists were arrested and many were executed in what was a shocking betrayal of their alliance. The Shanghai Massacre was a pivotal moment in Chinese history. It marked the end of the First United Front, the alliance between the KMT and the CPC. It was a declaration of war, not just between two parties, but between two ideologies. On one side, the nationalists with their vision of a modern, centralized China, free from the influence of foreign powers. On the other, the communists who sought to overthrow the bourgeoisie and establish a society where the proletariat held the power. The events of the Shanghai Massacre sent shockwaves through the country. It created a divide that would not be easily bridged. The hopes for a unified China were shattered, replaced with the grim reality of civil war. The KMT and the CPC had once fought side by side against the warlords that plagued China. But now, they found themselves on opposite sides of a battle line. The ideological differences that had once been simmering under the surface were now out in the open, and they would fuel a conflict that would last for more than 2 decades. In the aftermath of the massacre, a full-blown civil war became inevitable. China, once united, now found itself split between the nationalists in the south and the communists in the north. It was a stark division, a reflection of the ideological chasm that was widening across the world. Two sides, two visions, two strategies, all clashing in a bitter struggle to shape the destiny of a nation. On one hand, we had the nationalists, led by the charismatic yet controversial Chiang Kai-shek. The nationalists, bolstered by their urban strongholds and a formidable conventional army, relied heavily on direct confrontation. They utilized their superior resources to engage the communists in large-scale, pitched battles, hoping to crush the rebellion by sheer force. On the other hand, the communists, under the astute leadership of Mao Zedong, adopted a markedly different approach. They understood their disadvantage in numbers and resources, and so they turned to the people. Mao's strategy was rooted in guerrilla warfare, using the rugged terrain to their advantage, striking swiftly and then melting away into the vast rural landscape. Their connection with the peasantry was not just strategic, but ideological, as they promised land reforms and equality. But perhaps the most remarkable episode of this period was the Long March. Forced into a desperate retreat by the nationalists' encircling campaigns, the communists embarked on a grueling year-long journey spanning over 5,000 miles. Despite the harsh conditions and constant enemy attacks, the Long March served as a symbol of resilience, galvanizing the communists and solidifying Mao's position as their undisputed leader. In this clash of strategies, the war was not just about guns and soldiers. It was a battle for the hearts and minds of the Chinese people. Each side sought to convince the masses that their vision was the path to a better future. It was a high-stakes game of chess, with every move potentially changing the course of history. In this game of chess, both sides were relentless, but a pause was on the horizon.
a pause that would bring a deceptive calm before the storm, as the world braced for the next act of this dramatic saga.
As if the Civil War wasn't enough, a new threat emerged on China's eastern front. In the mid-30s, not long after the Civil War had begun to tear the nation apart, China found itself face to face with another adversary, Japan. This was the Sino-Japanese War, a conflict that would temporarily halt the internal strife and force the warring factions to turn their attention outward. The Kuomintang, or KMT, and the Chinese Communist Party, or CPC, both had to grapple with this new challenge. Despite their deep-rooted differences, they found themselves in a strange predicament where they had to put their civil war on pause and unite against a common enemy. The KMT, led by Chiang Kai-shek, bore the brunt of the fight against the Japanese invasion. They suffered heavy losses, both in terms of resources and manpower. Meanwhile, the CPC used this as an opportunity to build their strength, winning over the hearts and minds of the people through guerrilla warfare and propaganda. This period was a test of endurance for both parties, a test that would shape the course of the Civil War once the external threat had been dealt with. It was a time of strategic alliances and hard decisions, a time when the future of China hung in the balance. With the end of World War II, the stage was set for the final act of the Chinese Civil War. 1946, the Civil War resumes with renewed vigor. The end was near, but the journey was far from over. The final act of the Chinese Civil War was a tumultuous period marked by major battles and significant foreign intervention. Let's start with the battles, shall we? The year 1947 saw the Battle of Saiping, 4 months of intense combat resulting in a Pyrrhic victory for the nationalists. The communist forces, though suffering heavy losses, managed to hold their ground, demonstrating their resilience. But the tide turned dramatically in the Battle of Huaihai in late 1948. This battle, lasting for several weeks, saw the communists decisively defeating the nationalists, a victory that tipped the scales in favor of the Communist Party of China, or CPC. Foreign powers played a pivotal role in this final act. The United States, under the Truman administration, had been supporting the nationalists with military and financial aid. However, as the Civil War dragged on, it became clear that the nationalists were losing ground. The U.S. began to withdraw its support, leaving the nationalists in a precarious position. Meanwhile, the Soviet Union was making strategic moves of its own. They provided the CPC with captured Japanese weapons and other forms of support. This assistance proved instrumental in the CPC's eventual victory. In the end, it was the CPC that emerged victorious. The nationalists retreated to the island of Taiwan, and mainland China came under the control of the communists. The People's Republic of China was established on October 1, 1949, under the leadership of Chairman Mao Zedong. The establishment of the People's Republic marked a significant shift in the global political landscape, and it all stemmed from this turbulent period of civil war. The battles fought, the foreign influences, the strategies employed, all culminated in shaping the destiny of a nation. In 1949, the People's Republic of China was established, marking the end of a long and bloody conflict. This final act of the Chinese Civil War was a testament to the resilience, strategy, and sheer determination of those involved. The Chinese Civil War, a monumental clash of ideologies, had far-reaching impacts. A saga spanning over 2 decades, it was a period marked by relentless conflict and political upheaval. The war was born out of a historical context rich in complexities and contradictions, a nation grappling with the tumultuous push and pull between tradition and modernity. The major events of the war unfolded like a dramatic play, each act more intense than the last. It was a chess game of strategies, with both sides employing a mix of guerrilla warfare, diplomatic maneuvers, and propaganda campaigns to gain the upper hand. Who would have thought that a temporary halt would be called in the face of an external threat? The Sino-Japanese War, a grim interruption, forced the nationalists and communists to momentarily set aside their differences and unite against a common enemy. Yet the war was destined to resume, its final act culminating in the victory of the Communist Party of China. The nationalists, despite their initial advantage, were eventually driven to Taiwan, their dream of a unified modern China slipping through their fingers. In the aftermath, a new China emerged, its identity reshaped by the fires of war. The Civil War left an indelible mark on the nation's psyche, its lessons etched into the collective memory of its people. And so, a new chapter began in Chinese history, born from the